Feeding 10 billion people by 2050, protecting ocean ecosystems already under stress. Aquaculture is key, but it's also at a crossroads caught between rising demand and growing environmental impact. And when the challenges are this big, maybe incremental innovation isn't enough. Maybe we need to think in moonshots, 10x, not 10%. In this episode of BlueTech Around the World, I talked to Smiley from TidalX, a startup spin-out of GoogleX, the Moonshot Factory. They are using AI-powered cameras, real-time monitoring, and predictive tools to transform fish farming, improving fish welfare and making aquaculture more sustainable. It's not just about tech, it's about rethinking how we farm the ocean and building a future where innovation actually matches the scale of our global food and climate challenges. Tune in now and discover how TidalX is changing the game, one fish at a time.
BlueTech Around the World, the reference podcast for blue technologies and ocean innovation. Hello everyone and welcome back to BlueTech Around the World. Today we are exploring one of the most transformative innovations in ocean sustainability, aquaculture powered by artificial intelligence and digitalization. Aquaculture, often referred to as the farming of fish, shellfish, and seaweed, and plays a critical role in feeding the world. With over 3 billion people relying on seafood as a primary source of protein, the demand for sustainable practices has never been greater. But aquaculture faces big challenges: unsustainable practices, environmental degradation, and a growing global population expected to reach 10 billion by 2050. And that's where technology comes in. AI and digitalization are reshaping industry, and aquaculture is no exception. Advanced technologies like AI-powered underwater perception system are revolutionizing fish farming, tackling issues of sustainability, productivity, and environmental impact head-on. Today, we are exploring how one company is at the heart of this revolution, TidalX AI. Spun out of X, the Moonshot Factory, which is Alphabet's research and development lab focused on solving global challenges through ambitious moonshots that aim for a 10x improvement over existing solutions. And as a project incubated at X, TidalX is now tackling one of the humanity's biggest challenges: how to feed the world sustainably while protecting ocean ecosystems. And Time magazine recognized TidalX as one of the best inventions of 2023. And to guide us through this fascinating story, I'm thrilled to welcome Smiley, the Global Director of Sales and Marketing at TidalX AI. Hi, Kira.
Hello.
Kira brings a wealth of experience and passion to her role, having led sustainability initiative at Alphabet X, co-managed the operation at the Project Delta, and actively contributed to transformative efforts like the Google Food Lab and the Seafood Map Accelerator. Her academic journeys include a bachelor's and master's in Earth System from Stanford University, where she specialized in sustainable global food security and the environment. So with this unique blend of expertise in technology, sustainability, and global food system, Kira is at the forefront of driving innovation in aquaculture. So Kira, welcome to BlueTech Around the World.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kira. We are really happy to have you on the podcast. So let's dive straight into the subject. BlueTech Around the World. Kira, aquaculture and AI might not seem like obvious partners, and some of our listeners may be wondering what's the link between alphabets and aquacultures, but TidalX is redefining what's possible. So could you share how the idea for TidalX emerged from Alphabet's Moonshot Factory?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start understanding how these projects come out of Alphabet's Moonshot Factory, you have to understand that there are multiple projects. Many of them you have never heard of and you will never hear of, but it's because we keep and historically have kept things fairly private. So we have the space to rapidly innovate, try different ideas without feeling pressure to continue with one if eventually we see it's not working. So Alphabet and within Alphabet, the Moonshot Factory, over the past decade, we've done many different marine experiments focused on sustainability. Some of those included a project about turning seawater into fuel or testing floating solar panels to produce green energy, looking at how underwater robots could farm seaweed for food and carbon sequestration. So all of these learnings, though those projects didn't necessarily end up graduating, we took all the different learnings and those then feed into new projects. And so Tidal was one of those projects that came about after having built on a really strong foundation of many other ocean-based projects. And at some point, Mowi Norway, so the largest salmon aquaculture company in the world, came knocking on X's door. And we had some conversations to see if we could develop something that could help provide greater underwater insights that had not been previously available, whereas the groundwork was essentially doing manual samples, looking at historical data. In this case, we wanted to see if it was possible to have something real-time, statistically meaningful, and much more accurate. And so that ended up becoming essentially the basis of the beginning of Tidal.
So you just took all the best part of all the different innovative and research projects, and you create something that really focus on the need of the market and specifically real-time fish management practices, as you were saying. So yeah, good to know that it's a really startup mindset and that you had the opportunity to discover all these different aspects. So TidalX platform has been described as a game changer for aquaculture. Could you walk us through the core technology like the underwater camera system and the AI-powered feeding tools? How does this work exactly?
Absolutely. So within our platform, we essentially have three main components. We have our hardware side, which is, I think some famous folks in Silicon Valley have said anyone who's serious about software should make their own hardware. And we did exactly that. There's the software side, which includes a combination of the data you can find to give insights, as well as real-time video streaming or remote control of the hardware. And then there's the collaboration side, which is a tool within this platform that allows external experts to give feedback, to give insights, and to provide input so that the models and so the technology that we develop via software is the most accurate and the right technology for the space. And so within that ecosystem, we're able to have not only a camera system that can give images or video from the top, the bottom, or a stereo camera, which is what enables biomass estimation, as well as then the software, which is based on AI and machine learning models that essentially take in, detect the fish, detect whatever feature or aspect we're trying to understand, and then apply a statistical model to then translate that into our actual estimations based on the sample size that we saw, which if you think about historically, a manual sample that you might do in aquaculture might be 10 fish. It could be up to 100 fish. But in this case, we're able to see tens of thousands of fish every single day. And so right away, the difference in data availability is drastic to be able to then make estimates on the entire pen population.
You were talking about the fact that you have the hardware technology with the underwater cameras, the software, but also like what I will call the intelligence with all the expert insight on how to analyze this data and transform it in key input and insight for the farmers. So I was wondering regarding the development of this technology and innovation, did you have these competencies about how the analysis of the data internally, or did you partners with some farmers or with some research centers to have this ability to improve through machine learning your different algorithm? How did you work on that?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think first off, it's impossible to create innovations within any industry without having an expert partner. So if we, coming from the Alphabet ecosystem, the Google ecosystem, had come in and said, look, we Googled it. We know everything there is to know about fish farms. Very quickly, we would have created something that was absolutely not the thing that needed to be had by this industry. And so from the very beginning, I mentioned we partnered with a very large aquaculture company that had expertise, that had people that could commit time and effort to partnering with us to provide that expertise. And that meant that we could take our strength, which was the machine learning, top AI globally, intense data security from everything that comes with Alphabet and Google, and then apply that to this brand new space for us. Granted, we had other projects within the ocean before, as I mentioned, but it wouldn't have been possible without the input from these expert partners. And so through that combination, we were able to focus on key areas that we learned and understood to be really critical. So fish growth, fish health, sea lice for salmon in particular, feeding efficiency and the environmental impacts thereof. And then making sure that the way that we presented or the way we provided that technology was something that worked with the given infrastructure and that wouldn't interfere and that would be robust enough to survive the intense conditions in Norway in particular that you have in these freezing winters up in the north with waves that are many meters high. We need to have something that could survive that. And so this wouldn't have been possible without a partner and without moving outside of a lab into a real world situation.
Yeah, I can completely understand. I've been on some cages in Norway and I can really understand the harsh conditions. So you need to have technologies that could face these kind of challenges. And actually it's really interesting because when when you open and create a new technology for the market, there is always this dilemma on, do I focus more, do I partner more with tech, the competencies? So for you, like AI, machine learning, data security and data management, and the market data, how I know my fish, how I know the process of an aquaculture. And it's great here to see that you have the mindset of this partnership opportunities to combine these two approaches to give the better solution for the market. So it's really a good example on how it could work on the field. So thank you for that. Tech around the world. So if I sum up the platform, what you were saying, it's really like giving some insight for the farmers. Can you tell me, because you were thinking about real data, and I think it's a really important point about your platform, what kind of insight does the system provide to fish farmers, and why are they so critical?
Absolutely. And so I think to see the difference that's come from the type of innovation, it's important to understand the baseline. So I mentioned that historically, we've had data samples that you manually pull fish out of the water, which can harm their fish welfare, for example, right, by handling them. And then maybe you have some sensors that you drop in or rotate between pens. And so what we've done is basically said, how can we have real-time information for all of the pens all the time? And so within that, we have the systems that are in the water 24/7. They're moving through these pens on an autonomous winch system. And they're able to then give indicators on real-time estimates for fish welfare. So that could be areas like the wounds that might come on fish or the health of their skin and their scales and ensuring that their behavior is normal. Then we have sea lice, which in Norway in particular and in some other areas is such a huge challenge that's only getting more and more significant. And the treatments are becoming more and more significant. And so it's important to have a real-time insight that's as statistically significant as possible to know what's happening so you can better manage it. And so we estimate the lice per fish levels. And that's a big challenge because they're so small. And so being able to detect them first and then make an extrapolation to what is a lice per fish for the entire population was a big technical challenge. And so we provide that information. And then on the growth side, we provide information on the real-time biomass growth, which can help not only farmers understand the health or the growth of their fish, but also sales planners. And so not only does it help provide better welfare, but it also helps provide better cost savings and value because you know what's actually coming in your pens. And so you know what to plan for. And then that's the insight side. The other side is the actual autonomous control side. And so you can have insights, real-time insights, and you can have actual control. And that is basically our system integrates with the feeding systems that the farmers have. And then we use a series of indicators from the fish behavior to the pellets to the current score and temperature to then have a system make decisions on whether to increase or decrease the feed rate or stop feeding in order to prevent fall through of the pellets to the seafloor. And that's important because if you have pellets fall through to the seafloor, not only is it a huge cost to farmers, but it also means that you can have eutrophication or basically damage to the seafloor and to the environment surrounding. And so having a system that is 100% on, 100% focused all the time to helping prevent that waste can have both benefits to the farmers, but also benefits for the environment, which is really important for us.
Yeah, I really understand that as a innovation and the one that you provide here, you really have these two aspects, the economical one that for the farmer, they want like to increase the productivities and to have better insight about when to do the catching and about the selling, the biomass, but also on the environmental, as you were mentioning, the feeding, also the fish welfare with the sea lice. So it's really important, as you were mentioning, that you can monitor fish welfare and environmental conditions like temperature, salinity, and how to help them minimize their impact on the surrounding ecosystem. So instead of waiting for problems to become visible like a sick fish or poor harvests, the farmer can catch issues early and much like preventive care in human health. So that's really interesting to combine these two things. It's not just about prevention, but it's also how your technology optimize harvest planning and boost revenues for farmers with this real-time monitoring. And actually, I've had the opportunity to work on one European project, which was efficiency, which was using digital tools and how to use these fish behaviors and different environmental data to understand the behavior of the fish and how to optimize the feeding, because we know that the feeding it's like more than 60% of the cost of production.
68%, depending on the species.
So you want to be sure that you use it accurately. And as you were saying, that it doesn't go on the bottom of the ocean with some disturbance of the marine ecosystem and also on the fish with the drop of oxygen on that. So yeah, thank you. It was like real concrete example, more on the environmental side, but also on the production side. So you were also talking about the lice, and it's really interesting because I've been attending to different show and conference with different technology trying to count and really monitor automatically the lice to improve the fish welfare. So can you tell me more about it? Is it like kind of a camera that is going around the different nets and after it's an estimation? How does it work exactly?
Yeah. Well, essentially, we have a camera system in every single pen. This is something that is a benefit within, let's say, the salmon industry, which is a little bit more industrialized, that you have power and networking at all the pens, that this is possible. It's also the area that is most impacted often by sea lice, right? And so we have a system in every pen on this autonomous winch. It's moving throughout the entire pen. It's about 30 to 35 meters depth and up 120 to 160 meters circumference, if you can imagine it, in these circular pens with up to 200,000 fish, right? And so the system is moving through and constantly taking images and video clips to be able to track a fish across the screen and see if it can detect these sea lice. And then it sorts them between these adult females with or without egg strings, which are the ones that the government regulates, or mobiles, which are ones that will, some of them, if they're female, will evolve into these. And so it's almost a leading indicator in some ways. And so we separate those and then we make estimations using that statistical model that I mentioned to then apply that to our estimation for the entire population for, let's say, 0.2 lice per fish or 0.4 lice per fish. Depending on the time of year, you have different regulatory standards within Norway, for example, for when you need to treat. And so what we've seen is a case study, essentially, we've noticed is we can help reduce some of those treatments if you notice that actually the lice levels are at a level you don't need to treat quite yet, or you can treat this one pen, which has higher levels before these others increase too much. And so you reduce the mortality events come often after these treatment events, as well as making sure that if you're catching an upswing early, you can treat before it becomes a problem where the lice levels are so high that even after treating, you have to treat a few more times until the levels get low enough. And so these early warning signals are really important. And the first step was give insight to what is happening. And the next step will be, okay, now start predicting that. And through having real-time information, that unlocks the platform for us to be able to start moving in that direction and to have more predictivity after we've had the real-time piece of it locked down.
BlueTech Around the World.
Can I go a little further? You were talking before about the data and the prediction, and after automation, you were talking about that with the feeding, for example, estimating like the behavior of the fish and combined with automatic feeding. Do you think in the future, because I know that there are some startups that are tackling the challenge of the sea lice, do you think it's something that you can combine and partner with this kind of other technology provider to link your data and prediction with a technology that will help for the sea lice challenging? Is it something that you have in mind?
I mean, absolutely. We picture this as the beginning of a really broad ocean platform for an ocean economy, right? And so the more data and real-time insights that we have, the more we'll be able to make these broader understanding or sweeping insights into regions or others that can be then used by other technologists or innovators to create, whether it's new policy or new technology to help address those challenges. I think that within that space, the collaboration is important. So for example, we give insights into what is happening for sea lice, whereas maybe there's other companies that are working on removing lice when they're still larvae or helping to actually mitigate the lice. And to do that, they need to understand the levels initially and to see what happens before and after treatment, which we can track because we can track that fish group and see what was the upswing in levels and then what happened right after treatment, how effective was the treatment. And so let's say companies that are developing these treatment methods can use that to find the efficacy of their own products. In addition, you can test between those different two and see how quickly the lice level starts to rise again. And again, you can see if there's differences between regions, between treatment styles. And so having the real-time insight is the best way to then start actually managing better. You have to first understand what's happening.
Yeah, having the eyes on the water and on the fish, you are the best partners for the new solution coming for fish farming. I get that. But right now, TidalX's work is really focused on high-value species like salmon in region like Norway or Chile. Are you looking to diversify and adapt your technology for other aquaculture sectors, such as different fish species, shellfish, or even algae farming, or other region in the world? The diversification, is it something that you are thinking of right now?
When we started building this moonshot, the idea is, we want to have the best impact on global aquaculture and global ocean health. And so we started as our first use case within aquaculture and within salmon because it's great having a partner who is willing to invest into that development and who had the infrastructure so that you don't have to think about that too much. You just have to think about developing the AI and the machine learning and the algorithms to then detect it. And so now that we've built that, when we built our models, we really built it modularly, which means that rather than building a model for salmon, we built a model for finfish that then can be adapted to different species through basically adding a set of parameters that can help adapt it. And so the goal is always to be able to then expand to other species. We're, of course, very focused at the moment and want to make sure that we're successful where we are and then we're expanding. But we built in mind always being able to expand. And so we've done some early work with yellowtail, with seabream in Japan, for example. We did some early work in Indonesia and Fiji on seaweed biomass detection for blue carbon side. And so there's ways to apply this technology into other spaces or other species. It's just a matter of, our team having the capacity and time and being able to address all these different problems that we care so much about and want to address.
Of course, but it's already in your strategy and roadmap to have this algorithm ready to if you incorporate other parameters and specificity
Yeah,
from
and the other
region or
thing that
species.
we did, right. The other thing that we did was separate out our software from our hardware, because we know that the hardware that we built, very great for rough Norwegian conditions, for very large pens that you need this winch to move the system around. For other types of aquaculture, it's smaller pens, it's lower density within these pens. And so by separating out our software and our hardware, that means we can actually then apply our software to new hardware systems as they become available or a better fit for new areas, which will allow us to then expand that reach as well.
Okay, great. So you don't restrain yourself with your actual hardware technology, but you are open to other partners and technology depending on the market you're going to address in the future.
Exactly.
BlueTech Around the World.
Good. And actually, you say that your technology actually operates in extreme environments, such as port site with harsh condition. So what were the biggest technical challenges you have faced and how have you overcome them? I'm a little curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first place that we really needed to hone in on in the very beginning was how do we get a robust data set, right? How do we even start collecting the first fish that we can use to train these models? And so we ended up developing, essentially, to get past this, a racetrack that we would put individual fish in to swim around and get videoed or photographed from all angles. And so we had this fish run racetrack of fish going through, hundreds of fish going through to collect this initial data set. So that was challenge number one, and that was the solution we had. Going forward, we realized that in these crazy winter storms or freezing conditions, our winch and our system had to be so robust. So being able to ensure that it was something that could withstand marine corrosive environments and varying temperatures, that was another area that we really had to focus in on. And honestly, the third one is a little bit boring, but just starting operations in new regions, let's say in Chile and Australia, in these other areas, and learning how do logistics operate here? How do we get parts from point A to point B was another brand new place because we had gotten comfortable in one region and now we needed to learn a whole new system essentially. And so that, although it seems a little boring and not the hard part from the technology side, actually is one of the areas that we spend a lot of time on.
I understand. I completely understand. And as you were mentioning here, we were focusing more about the challenging of adopting advanced digital technologies in aquaculture, but it could also, as you mentioned, face cultural and operational hurdles. So how has TidalX worked with fish farmers to integrate these tools while respecting traditional knowledge and practices? I understand that with your initial partner, that you were working together, I think it was easier, but for your first customer, I think you change their practices. I met a lot of fish farmers that are really proud and happy to know their fish, the way they are swimming, the way depending on the color of the water. So how did you manage this cultural aspect for them to adapt new technology? I'm really curious about your experience on that.
That's a good question. So one of the main focus areas we've had is, of course, providing more insight so experts can make better decisions with it, right? And so we're not replacing people. If anything, we're providing more tools so that these experts can then say, great, I know X, Y, and Z about these fish, but now I have this broader insight. And so then I can apply my expertise and my knowledge to then understanding the so what behind this, right? And so we can give you the what, we can give you some hints at the so what, but then it's the experts who are saying, great, with this information, I'm now able to apply all of my depth of knowledge into understanding what actually needs to be done with this. And so if nothing else, it's really just an excellent tool to help unlock even more insight for these people. The other area is that, let's say for autonomous feeding or for a new feature, that's part of why we created this collaboration platform side of it, because then we have farmers or people who are excited to contribute and collaborate and say, hey, have you looked at this? Have you taken a look at this piece? And they can give us insights as to what we should be looking for. And then we can actually start building features to suit that. And so it continues to be this positive feedback loop where we give the start of something, they say, oh, but have you thought of? And then it continues to innovate and it continues to create the right tools for them to create even greater insights and understandings of their environment.
So like that, they are part of the process of integrating and make the solution evolves to really answer the need. So I think they are more willing to use this technology and innovation after that. And as you were mentioning, it's not to replace them, but it's more like a super decision tool to giving them the more insightful data for them to make the best decision. So yeah, so I think it's really important to have that in mind, and specifically because when you will adapt to other countries or other processes and tradition for culture and different spaces, because in Norway they are really used to technologies and innovation and data. But for example, in the Mediterranean, when we are using more like focusing on sea bass and seabream, is still really traditional, even if we have more technology. But I think it's really important also to adapt the marketing message to make the people involved and to adopt technology rather than just saying, okay, this is good for you, just, to make them part of the process to facilitate the adoption of the technology. You say that data is central to TidalX system. So how do you handle the collections, analysis, and the security of such valuable and sensitive data? One question that I have in mind is first, you have to collect a lot of data to make your algorithm. Sometimes you use the data of some farmers and you use it for more global and general algorithms. So how do you deal with that? And the second question is more about how do you make sure that your data are accurate? I'm thinking about things like, biofilings on camera and probes, how to make sure that you have the correct data from your sensors, because it's really something that I have experience on the field. So it's something I'm thinking of. If you build an algorithm on the data, how do you know they are accurate enough for this kind of algorithm?
That's a good question. So on the first side, the data that we are collecting from these customer pens that we then provide in our application to show those insights is owned by our customers. And it is so important that we have that data security. But luckily, because we came from the Alphabet ecosystem, the Google X, the X and Moonshot Factory, we're able to pool all of that very, very intensive protection of data to be able to apply to this space. So it may be the most secure that you probably could get within the aquaculture space at the moment. From the other side, looking at the accuracy of the data that's being given by the sensors, we actually developed two ways to be able to detect that. The first is we have real-time video feed. And so farmers can look at their video coming from the system, from the camera system, and see if there's biofouling or if something's going on. But the second area that we built was a fleet management system that essentially allows you to see the status of every single pen, every single camera system all the time to see if it's online, if there's some kind of challenge with the winch, just to make sure that it's actually collecting data. And we have tools to see the number of fish that we've seen on any given day, because if that number drops suddenly, it gives you a signal that maybe we need to go check on these systems. And so through creating a system of signals and alerts through various different facets, we're able to then make sure that farmers are aware and we're aware all the time if things are running as they should be. And that allows us to continue to ensure the data quality that we need to make the best possible estimates.
BlueTech Around the World.
Okay. So let's move to the question more on the business strategy and market penetration, because I think it's also something that we want to hear. We really understand everything about the technologies, the application, and the challenges you face. But I'm a little curious about how TidalX, which is recently graduated as an independent company with funding from global investor, what has the transition been like and how it has shaped the company's vision for growth, actually?
That's a good question. So within X's Moonshot Factory, the plan is always for projects that are successful enough and that have enough traction to eventually become their own companies. Initially, it was more within Alphabet. So companies such as Waymo, which you may have heard of, it's autonomous vehicles, that came out of the same Exxon Moonshot Factory. Then more recently, there's been a shift to being able to spin out and become a company outside of Alphabet with investment. And that's been excellent because it allows us to have the support, the wonderful incubator space, essentially, that we could build and test these technologies in a low risk environment. But then when it's time to really start scaling and it's time to go really fast, we have the independence and autonomy now as our own company to be able to do that. So we continue to have a close relationship with Alphabet, with the Moonshot Factory, but we also have the freedom, the autonomy, the investors with good subject matter expertise to then be able to really hone in and scale quickly in new regions, to hire new team members in other areas without some of the bureaucracy that can come just naturally in being part of a very large organization. So it's been very helpful to help us accelerate, and we're really grateful for the time that we had within the Moonshot Factory to shape and develop the idea and the technology itself.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because compared to other startups evolving in this sector, you had this backup and all these acceleration phases, and now you have the autonomy to make your own move and your own decision to have more like a big growth. So how do you position yourself in this next second phase?
Yeah, so I think that, historically, we uniquely had the very close partnership with a salmon aquaculture company. And so we could ensure that end to end and it was working and that we could scale and they're willing to scale with this type of technology. And so that was excellent. Now looking into the future, we have this technology. We're looking to continue to expand with, let's say, the Norwegian market. We are also looking and starting to expand in other areas like Australia and Chile, still primarily with salmon. But one of the unique aspects of our system is that we have that autonomous feeding, which is truly allowing us to have this all-in-one system where you don't have to have, let's say, two different cameras, one for feeding, one for biomass and health and welfare. Instead, you can have one system that really can do it all. And it will continue to evolve and to have even more features adapted to it, from detecting more behavior or gill disease to doing fish identification or other areas to track individual fish. And so there's more that we're working on and innovating. And so part of our strategy here is, one, provide this robust all-in-one system to the market, and two, never let go of what we really learned and discovered within the Moonshot Factory, which is always keep innovating. Don't get too stuck on where you are in the moment, but keep innovating and be able to take the risks and have the bravery to take the risks to leap forward so that you can create something that really is important for problem solving and for the solution space.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because even if you're already tech driven, the fact that you ran the Moonshot Factory really trying to resolve some of the most biggest challenge, you also have this market driven perspective, and which is really important when you are providing a new technology on the market. And that's a powerful combination because you are not just bringing tech to the table, you are co-creating solution with those who know the industry best. And as you mentioned, this technology can evolve with a single product. You can evolve and adapt it to different application depending of the good result of your R&D teams. So that's really great.
BlueTech Around the World.
So Kira, as someone with a lot of experiences and immersed at the intersection of technology, aquacultures, and businesses, I will really be happy to have your personal opinion about what do you see as the next big developments that could revolutionize this industry?
I think, first of all, in all of the conferences I've been attending and all of the communication spaces, everyone is talking about AI and about the potential and how it's very critical for creating new insights and improving. I think the biggest exciting application or innovation will be just the widespread adoption, right? The technology exists, but I think that the next innovation will be being able to then spread that wide enough and having wide enough adoption that then you can actually start the next level of innovation, which is widespread insights on a regional or a national level or a global level. And so the wider spread this is, the more data you have and the more that you're able to create new insights or novel insights. I also think that, like I mentioned earlier, within that space, there's having real-time information, and the next step is prediction. And so I think we'll start to see more and more prediction now that we're starting to have a really wide database of real-time insights and estimations. I also think that we'll continue to have probably more innovative models around new types of welfare. And so shifting from visuals to further innovation on fish behavior as we continue to learn more about that and collaborate with experts in fish health. And then I think that we have the opportunity with these insights to really do something end to end and look at the entire aquaculture value chain in a way that can relate back to genetics and ensure that we have fish that can be resilient, because with climate change and with evolving conditions and warmer water temperatures, we have new types of parasites and more prevalence of different diseases, et cetera. And so to be able to survive and have really sustainable aquaculture in ocean conditions, it's important for us to be able to adapt. And so what brought us here isn't necessarily what will bring us forward. And to do that, we'll need to have more insights that can feed into genetics and feed into feed and other areas so that we can continue to have fish that stay healthy despite evolving conditions.
Yeah, that's right, what you are saying. I was just attending to the regional aquaculture conference organized by GFCM in Crete in December. And the hot topics was really how to adapt to climate change and how to make the industry and the practices more resilient, because it's really a big issues and a big concern for fish farmers, specifically in the Mediterranean Sea. And having this kind of data and the prediction on how to integrate new parameters that were not like the historical data, because with climate change, it's evolving rapidly. And with all this concept of the digital twin of the ocean, you were saying that it also helped to observe and to predict not only what we can see, but also everything related to the fish behavior, but also the biology or the chemistry of the oceans.
BlueTech Around the World.
As I think you are a really inspired person, and with all your background, I really want to ask you if you want to give advice to some people who want to launch their startups or entrepreneurial project with really this innovative aspect. What would be your best advice or tips for them?
I would certainly recommend, one, coming into the blue tech space and into the blue economy. We have blue food, you have blue energy, blue transportation, blue carbon. There's so many areas, and the ocean historically has been so underserved and undervalued. Just now, we're starting to have this UN Decade of Oceans and more of a focus on food coming from the ocean and on all of the areas and how it is truly a champion of our planet. It kept us from changing even more rapidly, but being able to make sure that it is, in fact, a champion and not a victim. And so come into the blue space. The second thing I would say is, if you're trying to start something, find experts very quickly and learn and listen as much as you can to them before trying to apply the same hammer and nail to every single problem and situation. Today, I'm seeing, everyone is very excited about generative AI, and there are many applications for it. But I think that being critical and thinking about, is this the right tool for this problem? Or could there be a simpler solution for the same problem? We like to often take something that's very fancy and apply it to a situation that maybe a simple solution could actually work better for. And so there are ways that I think these types of technologies are critical to creating new insights in a changing environment. But there's also ways that a simple shift in other ways could create a big difference. And so being smart about and being critical about what is the right tool for the right problem, I think will be also important to take you a long way, so that you don't end up doing what the space committee did, right? Where they designed this pen that could work in space when a pencil would have worked. So being careful about that, but also continuing to take risks and and talk to experts to think about what if, right? That's the 10x piece. Is incremental change won't take us where we need to be. We need 10x change. Let's just do it efficiently and start with the hardest thing first.
Wow. Thank you, Kira. That's really inspiring and really concrete example. And I really believe in what you are saying. Incremental innovation is good and disruptive innovation is good, but it's really important. As you were mentioning, I'm a really supporter of the job to be done. So if you have a low tech or tools that can make it happen, just use it. You don't have to think about some fancy things. And I think sometimes some entrepreneur stuck at the first phase is because they are looking for the perfect tool, the perfect timing, and sometimes just step by step try to do with what you have right now and just improve and increment on the actual tools that you have right now.
And actually, if I can add to that, I
Yeah,
think
sure.
at the Moonshot Factory, we had several different principles of innovation. And so one was, think 10x instead of 10%. One was, start with the hardest thing first. The other is what you mentioned, essentially, which is learn to love. We call it the V0.crap, which is the earliest version. It doesn't have to look pretty, but get something real into a real environment so you can get feedback early and often, because otherwise you might go very far without realizing that it's completely the wrong thing. And so that's where diverse perspectives come in. And also, to avoid wasting time, it's that start with the hardest thing, which is if you know that you can probably accomplish something, don't start with it, even though it feels good to check off that box. Start with a thing you're not sure is possible, test that out. And if it proves not possible, you can pivot more quickly. And if it proves possible, then you know you have a direction to build in. And so all of those, I think, are really wise principles for creating something new in these types of spaces.
Thank you for sharing this innovative mindset. I think it's really important, and that any entrepreneur who want to launch their startup or innovative project should have in mind. So thank you very much, Kira. Before we wrap up, do you want to share something else about TidalX? Any news, any events that you want to share with us?
Oh, well, we'll definitely be at several different conferences this year, continuing to expand our conversations. I think that what I will say is there's more innovation coming. So we are constantly evolving. So there will continue to be new releases and new excitements throughout the year, and stay tuned.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kira. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and the incredible work TidalX is doing to revolutionize aquaculture. To our listener, if you'd like to learn more about TidalX, you can visit their website, which is TidalX.ai, if I'm right. And as always, thank you for turning in to BlueTech Around the World. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join us next time for more stories of innovation and tech in the ocean world. Thank you very much, Kira.
Thank you for having me.
BlueTech around the world.